A controversial man, yes, because he's speaking out against the organized system of the world as we know it. David Icke is the former British football player and BBC news presenter who has now become the most legendary conspiracy theory icon. Mother Teresa once said, "We must never be afraid of being a sign of contradiction for the world." And that could not be more true of David Icke, who visited Copenhagen, Denmark in May 2011 to give a 9-hour-long lecture about what he claims really is going on in the world behind the scenes. I sat down and spoke to Icke about his extraordinary worldview and interviewed several of his many fans before his day-long speech. Thank you very much for joining me, and welcome to Denmark.
Thank you. Nice to be here. I've been here before, but it's the first time I've been here when it's not been snowing. I had one of my great experiences in Denmark, which was going on a ferry, which at the same time was an icebreaker. I've never done that before.
Oh wow, it's beautiful in the summer though.
You go out the harbour and it's just ice. Boom, boom. It's a great experience. I live on an island, you see. I go on a ferry all the time in England. But
I know.
It's never had to break the ice before. So I remember that.
Well, now I'm going to break the ice with you.
Oh, go ahead.
When you give speeches or simply speak out against the system or the government, you shock and appall and astound and even infuriate some people. But you also thrill and excite and entertain and or simply just fascinating everybody. And I want to start where it all began, like in 1991, I believe.
1990.
1990,
yeah.
Where you went from being a very famous, serious news sportscaster.
That's right.
And to then go out in the British press claiming that you were actually the son of God, and you kind of really shook up the whole nation. Was that to shock, or what was that all about?
No. See, what happened to me in 1989, throughout that year, I'm introducing the sport and the news for the BBC. I'm a national spokesman for the British Green Party. And while all that was going on, I was having some very strange experiences throughout 1989. And that experience was that when I was in a room alone, it didn't feel like I was alone. And it was kind of, mild to start with. But as the year unfolded, it became very, very tangible. And I sat in early 1990 in a hotel called the Kensington Hilton. I was working for the BBC. It's just near the BBC in Shepherd's Bush. And this presence was so obvious and blatant that I said to the empty room, "If there's something there, would you please contact me, because you're driving me up the wall." Within days, long story short, but a series of amazing coincidences, I ended up finding this book by a psychic in a bookshop near my house, on a railway station near where I still live. And when I turned it over and read the blurb and I saw the word psychic, what came to me was, I wonder if this woman could pick, because I'd never seen a psychic before, but I wonder if this woman could pick up what I'm feeling around me. So I went to see her, and we went a couple of times, and what I told her was, I've got arthritis, which I have. Maybe your hands-on healing will help, because she does that stuff, which is just an exchange of energy. It's no great, no great mystery. But so I didn't want her to have any idea why I was going to see if she'd pick this up. So 2 times I went, hands-on healing, fine, nice little chat, home. 3rd time, I'm sitting on this medical type bench. She's working on my knee, just off from my knee. And I felt like a spider's web on my face, very, very tangibly. And that made me kind of sit up a bit, because I'd read in her book that sometimes when other levels of reality are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel a spider's web on your face. Funnily enough, I never have since, but I did then very powerfully. I didn't say anything to this woman. Her name was Betty Shine. But I thought, oh, that was in her book. 15 seconds later, no words communicate between us. She launches her head back and says, "My God, I'm going to have to close my eyes for this one. This is powerful." So I'm into none of this stuff at the time, Lucas. My backside is slipping down this bench thinking, what have you got into, Ike? What's all going on? And this woman then says, I'm being told to tell you a series of things. And this was that I was going to go out on a world stage. I was going to reveal great secrets. That there was a story that had to be told. Humanity had to know what was really going on, in effect, compared with what it thought was going on. that I was going to be world famous doing this eventually, and I would face enormous opposition, but they would always be there to protect me. And they would put knowledge into my mind, and they would guide me to knowledge so that I would put the puzzle pieces together.
Who are they?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like a spiritual thing?
Yes. When I think of they, I don't see anything in embodiment. I see consciousness. It's a form of consciousness. But from that moment, one other thing that came through was one word-for-word quote: "One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world." The other thing was that there was a vibrational change coming. And by vibrational, I mean informational change in this cosmic internet, wireless internet that we actually live in, as I explain in my books and talks. And that it was going to have the effect of waking vast, enormous numbers, eventually, of people, wake them up from what it really described as their amnesic state, their trance state, their almost coma state that they were operating in. And all I can say, Lucas, is that and I felt to go with this, but I had an open mind and I'm asking questions. All I can say 21 years later is everything I was told that day has happened, because for years and years and years, I couldn't have filled a phone booth with people wanting to hear this. Now it's incredible wherever I go, and the waking up is happening. It's getting bigger. People are asking questions about self, reality, and world events that they weren't asking before. Not all of them by any means, still not the majority, but gathering numbers of people.
It's happening.
It's happening. And the other thing is that when I was told all those years ago that knowledge would be put into my mind and I would be led to knowledge, from that moment it started this synchronistic sequence that goes on all the time of coming across documents, people, books, personal experiences that are together giving me puzzle pieces.
Like the law of attraction, for example? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yes.
Spiritually?
Yes, it's law of attraction, because of course we see what we call the physical. It's not really physical, it's holographic, but we see the physical as we perceive it, but we're actually giving off a magnetic field. And that magnetic field attracts to us other magnetic fields that we call people, places, ways of life, jobs, locations, all these things. And so what we put out, we actually get back. Although we point out here, it's your fault for my life, actually we're putting it and we're pulling it in. But it's almost beyond that in this journey I've had. There is some other force that's saying, look at this, look at that, here's another piece in the puzzle. And my, if you like, my challenge, though it's not really been that really, but the potential challenge was that I would let go of the fear of what other people think, which is the prison that most people live in, so that I would go with this, that I would...
But you understand that when you were sitting on like the Terry Wogan show back then, and little nice ladies from your hometown of Leicester and wherever were looking at this, and you were saying, I was told I was the son of God, that it kind of became this very controversial thing.
I mean, to a couple of things to that. First of all, you've got to understand that well, you haven't got to, but I invite you to understand, that I went through an experience a matter of a few weeks before the Wogan show, where I ended up on a hill in Peru, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of an ancient standing stone circle, which I had not planned at all. It was just this synchronicity of experience and happenings that put me there. And I'm still, at that point, the guy who was reading the news and representing the Green Party. I was still that guy, although this other stuff was coming into my life and I'm thinking, where is this going? But I'm still that guy. But when I walked up to the top of this mound, hill mound, I didn't know that there was a stone circle at the top there. I just got up there and there was. And what had happened is that I was in this little bus, just me and a tourist guide and the driver. And I looked out the window as we're going past this mound, and all I could hear in my mind when I looked at this mound was, come to me, come to me, come to me. And now, I'm still the guy at that time who was introducing the news and the sport, so I'm thinking, that mound's talking to me. This is absolutely crazy what's going on. But anyway, I said, can you stop the bus? I want to go up there. It'll be a few minutes. Well, I was about an hour. Because when I got up there, this was the real big changing point, which led into what happened in the Wogan show, because this is February 1991 now. And I walked into the middle of this mound, and I'm looking across to the distant mountains, and there's a lagoon to my right, very uninhabited area. And this stone circle's obviously been there a long, long, long time. And then suddenly my feet start sticking to the ground as if magnets are pulling them, and the bottom of my feet started to burn. And this had happened to me once before after this process had started, so I was kind of aware of this, only this was much more powerful. And then two lines of words came through my mind very, very clearly. One said, they will be talking about this 100 years from now. And the second one was, it will be over when you feel the rain. And I'm looking up, Lucas, at a cloudless, bright blue Peruvian sky with a piercing sun and a red nose to prove it. Now, it will be over when you feel the rain. I mean, it could be a month. What's going on? This is crazy. But then this like drill started going in the top of my head, this drill feeling went through my body, through my feet to the ground. There was another flow coming the other way. Then my arms went out at 45 degrees like that without me making any decision to do it. And I've only put my arms up and they're starting to ache. They were like that for the best part of an hour until it was over, and then they were agony, but not when I was doing it. And basically, this energy started coming through me very, very powerfully, and my body was shaking. And I kept going in and out of consciousness. You know, like you're driving a car and like you don't remember where the last 2 miles has gone because your subconscious has been driving it. You know, without the subconscious would be dead. This was happening to me. But one of the times I came back to the conscious mind, I noticed that there was a light grey mist over the distant mountains. And I watched it, it became darker and darker. I'm thinking it's raining over those mountains. And in the next, not very long actually, it was almost like, I've described it as like a curtain of cloud and rain, because, you know, weathermen talk about a weather front. Well, this was a straight line, like curtains coming across the sky. And eventually I'm like standing here, and I'm watching this wall of stair rod water come at me. By this time, I'm like, you know, can't hardly stand. And then the rain hit me, and it was like someone had flicked the switch off, and suddenly, my arms, my shoulders are now agony, my legs are like jelly because of what's been happening. And for the next 3 months, the Wogan show was in the middle of the 3 months. If you'd have asked me what planet I was on, I would have had to have checked. And when I look back in retrospect, from the perspective of now understanding so much more, it was like that 3 months. You know when you press too many keys on a computer and it freezes because there's too much information to process?
It was too much.
Well, it was like a bubble had burst in me, and insights, concepts, information, all the stuff were pouring into my conscious mind. And my body, a computer, obviously said, I'm freezing. And so it was in that 3 months that I went on the Wogan show and all the rest of it. Now, I wasn't saying that I'm like Jesus. I would strongly suggest that the Jesus stories are just rewrites of ancient stories using different names. So the evidence for that is overwhelming. But I was trying to get across that we are all, if you want to use that symbolism, we are all sons and daughters of the whole, God, if you want to. You call it Ethel, it doesn't matter.
So these experiences actually got you started.
They did. And
so if we move a little bit forward,
sure,
to today, to the hottest current topic of the world right now, the captivation and killing of Osama bin Laden by the Americans. This is, you know, finally the United States got him, they killed him, and it's a huge triumph for the world and maybe a closure for the 9/11 nightmare?
Well, they say that miracles are possible. You know, I say, you know, miracles are just understanding how reality works a bit more than people that don't. But it does move me to think it's a miracle that someone could be dead and then they could shoot him again. I find that extraordinary because...
You mean he's already dead?
Oh, yes. I mean, as I started going on this journey after my experiences I've just described, and these puzzle pieces were being given to me, it became clear right from the start that we are living in a movie. If you take the Matrix movies, for instance, this fake world that people would believe they lived in, well, we live in something like that. And part of it is what I call the movie. The mainstream media, and I've worked for it, I worked for it for years, they're not journalists, they're movie correspondents. They are telling us what to believe about the movie. And the movie is the official version of everything. The official version of Libya, the official version of Iraq and Afghanistan and 9/11 and bin Laden's killing, that gives us a fake version of what's going on so that we react to that fakery and we allow things to happen in the world, even demand them, on the basis of believing the fakery is true. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. There's basically a network of interbreeding families going back to the ancient world that sit on top of the banking system, the transnational pharmaceutical cartel, the oil cartel, the biotech cartel. They own governments, any party that has any chance of forming a government, etc. And therefore, they have to, because there's this hidden control, this hidden hand, they have to sell to the public a movie version of events that doesn't involve the fact there's a hidden hand going on. So when they're bringing in different events on their long-planned agenda to centralize power in the world so that everyone's controlled by a world government, a world army, a world currency, etc., they have to sell these steps on the journey as individual events, not connected to the others, and also they have to find an excuse for those events to happen. So if you take 9/11, look at the way the world has changed since 9/11, or the massive increase in surveillance control, the war on terror, invading countries. This would never have been sold without 9/11. And the belief that a group of Arab hijackers who couldn't fly one-engine Cessnas suddenly manifested the ability, like Trinity in the Matrix, where she downloaded how to fly that helicopter and got in and flew it. That's only the explanation that could have happened. Because one of the flying instructors of two of these people actually said that he was surprised they could even drive a car, they were so bad. And I talked to people like a 28-year pilot with Lufthansa who said to me, I couldn't have flown the planes like that, never mind them. But there has to be a cover story. And as a result of the cover story, which is, it was bin Laden, and they did this, and they're naughty, and we've got to go into Afghanistan to get bin Laden and the Taliban. Now, let's think about that in the movie.
Who was bin Laden?
Well, that's a very good question. Who was bin Laden?
Who was he?
Well, bin Laden is a member, or was a member, of a very rich and influential family in Saudi Arabia. One step down from royalty, if you like. They run a massive construction company. And the bin Laden family, for years going back, was very close to the Bush family, Father George Bush in particular. And what happened is that there was a man called Zbigniew Brzezinski. He was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. And he has been the mentor, brackets, handler, of Barack Obama since the 1980s, and is one of his advisors today. Now, what Brzezinski said a few years ago in a French news magazine was this. I knew about it anyway, but he came out with it. That when he was national security advisor, he wanted to give the Soviet Union, quote from him, their Vietnam. To do that, he wanted to entice them to invade Afghanistan, which was run by a Soviet satellite government in the capital, Kabul. So he admitted in this interview with this French magazine that he funded and trained, or had funded and trained, freedom fighters in Afghanistan, which became known as the Mujahideen and then morphed into the Taliban. But what they wanted was a focal man that everything could be focused on, keep it real simple. So they pulled bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, out of Saudi Arabia, and he was on the CIA payroll and all the rest of it, to be the focal point. And then suddenly, what happened to bin Laden? He's now morphed into a terrorist that's anti-American.
He probably didn't agree to that, huh?
Well, I mean, it's a bloody joke. And now we've got Barack Obama, whose mentor is Zbigniew Brzezinski, who sent thousands more troops into Afghanistan to fight the Taliban that morphed out of the Mujahideen that was started off by his mentor, Brzezinski. Now, people would say, oh, that's incredible, that's ridiculous, what a contradiction, but it's not, because there is a common theme that connects both the decision to create the Mujahideen that became the Taliban and the decision all this time later to send more troops in to attack them. What is best for the agenda in that moment, the agenda of global control. And I've been writing for years, Lucas, years and years, about the plan to create a third world war out of a trigger in the Middle East involving the West, Europe, North America, etc., and China and Russia. I was saying it from the kind of late 1990s, I was saying this, because I came across this information. And now we are seeing it unfold before our eyes. As a result, see, there's one technique that people have to know, and if they know it, they'll read the world in a completely different way. It's something that I call problem, reaction, solution. You want to change the world in a way that you know that if you openly announce it, you're going to get a massive reaction from the public. No, we're not having that. So you don't openly announce it. You play problem, reaction, solution. Stage one, you covertly create a problem. You make sure someone or something else is blamed for it. You tell the people the version of the problem that you want them to believe, and the mainstream media passes that from the authorities to the people unquestioned. And then still writes journalist on its tax form. At stage two, what you're looking at is a reaction from the public to the problem. It's a reaction of do something, something must be done, or at least, well, we don't like what they want to do, but what else can happen given what's happening? And so then those who've created the problem got the reaction, do something, or we'll let you do something because we can only see that as the answer. They then openly offer the solutions to the problems they've created, which are changes in legislation that take away basic freedoms, they're invading countries, and all the rest of it. And so when you look at the current bin Laden situation, there's a reason why they've chosen to kill him now, even though he was dead years ago.
But how did he die? Who was he?
Well, it seems
what do you think?
It seems from the various sources over the years that he died very soon after 9/11, probably of something called Marfan syndrome.
But how could you keep that a secret? Everybody would like to know that, of course.
Well, it's easy to keep it a secret. You just make sure that bin Laden's never seen, except on fake videos that you make. And you don't talk about him. You see, if you noticed, Lucas, immediately after 9/11, it's we must get bin Laden, right? Oh, we're going to Afghanistan, we're going to get bin Laden. And once they're in Afghanistan, bin Laden, actually George Bush, actually said it doesn't really matter anymore, right? But now suddenly it does matter all these years later. Why? Number of reasons, on a simple political level, but this is not so much the reason for it as a bonus for them. It puts Obama in a better light with the American people, those among the American people who just get their information from the mainstream media and think John Wayne films are real, you know. And that has given him a boost, but that's a bonus. Real key reasons why they're doing it now. One, I said immediately after it happened, they're going to justify more Orwellian controls here. What did they say?
George Orwell,
1984, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What did they do immediately after it? What are now these people in politics in America doing? They're saying, yeah, well, bin Laden's gone, but actually, it could be more dangerous now because of reprisals, because of us killing him, right? And so now they're saying, oh, this is the other thing they found. Do you remember the box cutters they found at a bin Laden house in Afghanistan? Why would he have box cutters in a bin Laden house in Afghanistan? Shouldn't they be in America? It's crazy. I mean, I sat in my front room, Lucas, a few days after 9/11. I watched a BBC newsreader, without laughing, telling me they'd found a passport of one of the hijackers in Vestry Street, right next to where the Twin Towers was. I mean, massive explosion, fireball, paper passport. I'm not a physics major, mate, but there's something not right there. It's a lie. Of course it's a lie.
But who is then behind
why is
the
it,
World Trade Center?
Why do they lie like this? Why do they lie like this? Why? Because they know that the people do not retain detail. They retain an image of something. So, oh yes, Ethel, they found a passport for one of the hijackers. It was them. Oh, that's the idea.
But today with the media and YouTube and Google and everything, is, you know, there's a lot of information coming out.
Yes, it is, and that's why they're not getting away with it so easy. And that's why there's been some hilarious, justifiably hilarious kind of reaction and head shaking to this. But
why would they still do it then? How would they get away with it?
They can still get away with it because those that are not taking the opportunity to research and to read these alternative sources of information, and still it's the vast majority not doing that, who are getting their information from the mainstream news sources, all they're getting is the official story, which becomes official history by repetition. Ask me this, okay? You're a journalist, a real journalist, you're sitting here. The president's just stood up and he's told you that bin Laden's been killed. Okay, fine. Okay, tell me more. It was a shootout. Yeah, okay. And his wife was killed and he was being shielded by his wife and he had an AK-47. Yeah, okay, fine, okay. And then 24 hours later, actually, no, he was unarmed. He didn't have a gun. And by the way, his wife wasn't killed and he wasn't hiding behind anybody, right? Okay. Now, then you see this picture. Hey, the president, we got him. Hey, oh my God, you see them looking there, Hillary Clinton. They were watching live footage of bin Laden being shot. Oh my God. And then they announced 24 hours later, or 48 hours later, there was no live footage. There was no live coverage. What were they watching? The wall? What were they watching? They still got that picture out.
But
now,
David, who's behind it?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now, I'm telling you that information is circulating. The government has actually admitted it. You ask 80% of the people in this world for the official version of what happened to Osama bin Laden, they will tell you he was shot by Navy SEALs in a shootout, and that the president and Hillary Clinton watched it live on from the White House. And then, of course, you're a journalist now. Now, hold on a second. That's a lie. That's a lie. And what happened to the body? Let us see the body, and then it's no problem, is there? Oh, we buried it at sea immediately under Muslim custom. Apparently there is no Muslim custom, full enough, of burying bodies at sea. You may have noticed that lots of Muslims live in very, very large deserts where there's not a lot of sea about. And the whole story is absolutely ludicrous. And then, well, okay, let's see pictures. You must have taken pictures. Oh, no, they're too gruesome. I mean, oh... and I'm reading now mainstream newspapers, and I'm watching mainstream television, and they're not, even with all that, Lucas, they're not saying the government claims this is what happened. It's now official history. Oh, this is what happened. Bin Laden was shot and so and so, so and so. It's a nonsense. But why? Why are they doing this? Well, first of all, as a bonus, it puts a gloss on Obama, even though he never ordered any of it, just does what he's told, like all presidents. They then are now pushing more control and surveillance in areas where they've not done it before. Why? Because we found, not showed it as mind, we found in the compound, it was a house, but compound sounds more scary, you see. We found in the compound a treasure trove of information on his says that they were planning to derail trains and target soft targets like shopping malls and stuff in America. So we need to have now more and more surveillance control on the trains and in shopping malls and you know, department stores and all that stuff. That's what's now being suggested.
So you're saying it's a reason to have more
Problem,
surveillance?
reaction, solution. Now this is the big one. I've been putting a map up on the screen in various interviews for like 3 months of North Africa and the Middle East. And I was saying to them, all these people's revolutions, they're being triggered by agents provocateurs that are locking in and tapping in to genuine and understandable rage of the people at suppression by dictators and tyrants like those in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and all the rest of it, which are if not funded and armed because they got the oil money. Some are funded and armed, but they haven't got the oil money. But they're certainly armed by America and the West. And the British are always heavily and bloody involved in everything, going way back. And they're ticking these countries off. And I've been saying for years they want a confrontation with China and Russia. And they're going to trigger it out of the Middle East. Now, I've been pointing out these countries, and I said some weeks ago, watch for Syria. Syria is going to have a people's uprising, because that's what they're doing. And now we bring us to the bin Laden killing. It brings us to Pakistan. They claim they killed him close to a military garrison academy to emphasize the next stage, which is to say proof that Pakistan was hiding him, knew where he was, and therefore it sponsors terrorism. We've now got a guy called David Frum, who was a George Bush, boy Bush speechwriter, who coined the phrase, the axis of evil, Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, who has come out in the last 24 hours and said, we should now start targeting Pakistan as a sponsor of terrorism after the proof that they were hiding bin Laden all this time. And follow Pakistan through to its border. What's the next country on? China. What has China come out and said in the last 48 hours? To America, in effect, you start messing with Pakistan, you're messing with us. It's all unfolding as I was told it would a long, long time ago. It's a movie which we're being sold by the mainstream media because it will not question.
But David, the media, you say that the media manipulate the daily news that we see on television, but how on earth is it possible for that many newspaper publications and TV stations and journalists who doesn't even work together to present this as collective truth?
Piece of cake. Tell you why. The media takes the point of reference from which it sees the world as what it perceives to be the norm at any one time. So, if you had today's media centuries ago, they would have ridiculed anyone who said the earth was round, because the norm was that it was flat. And only when the norm changed did it change from ridiculing people saying the earth was flat to ridiculing people saying the earth is round to ridiculing people that said the earth is flat. In the same way, the media are not journalists, they are repeaters. And what I mean by that is, well, the bin Laden story and the 9/11 story are classic examples of what I'm talking about. The official story comes out, this is what happened. Now, real journalists would say, okay, this is what the government says happened. We are going to investigate this, and we're going to see if it stands up. That would bring problem, reaction, solution to an end immediately, because they would see, because it doesn't take a genius, that the official versions are fundamentally flawed and full of holes.
But why don't they do that?
Because they take the official version that they're given and they accept it.
Given by whom?
Given by the authorities. Obama stands up, Lucas. He announces that bin Laden's been shot in a compound. He provides no evidence whatsoever, except that as the days unfold, clearly lies galore have been told in the official story. And yet, as I said a few moments ago, You pick up a newspaper today, this morning, you watch the news anytime today, in America, here, anywhere, and if the bin Laden story comes up, they will say bin Laden was shot by Navy SEALs in this compound in Pakistan. There is no evidence supporting that. It is a statement from the president, end of story, and yet it's now official history.
Yeah.
I mean, if people have investigated 9/11, they would have taken it apart. Journalists, I mean.
But why don't journalists do that then?
Well, first of all, I was a journalist for years. You do not have to be intelligent, sharp thinking, and motivated by a desire for truth to be a journalist. It is not on the list of must-haves. It should be, but it's not. And therefore, you've got people who are basically public relations officers for the official version of events. Mm-hmm. They take the official version, they report it to the people as if the official version is true. And as a result of that, there is no investigative journalism worth the name anymore. Plus the fact, you then have to get that, even if you are a journalist worthy of the name, you've got to get that through onto the program and into the newspaper. There's a...
so there's someone behind sitting there and saying what can be printed or said on television or not?
Basically, there is a... There's all the organizations that run the world today, media organizations, governments, transnational corporations, banks, they're all pyramids. At the top of the pyramid, you've got the tiny few that know what the game is within the pyramid, the organization. And the rest of the organization are just people working for it, unconnected to other people that are working for it, who just go to work, do their job, and go home. They're not trying to manipulate anybody. The only people that know how all those different contributions fit together are the few people at the top. And this is the structure through which they use. So at the top of the, well actually there's a level beyond this, but let's pick it up here. There's a point where there's a group of people, small group of people, maybe even one, who actually owns the media organization. Mm-hmm. And from that comes down the policy.
Well, you know what, that brings me to my next thing.
Right.
A little present I have for you.
Oh, no.
Because you speak a lot about the New World Order.
Right.
And I have a little present for you. It's a $1 bill.
Yeah.
And on the back of the dollar bill, there is, in fact, what you just said, there is a picture of a pyramid. Mm-hmm. And then on top there is this, the eye, an all-seeing eye. And underneath it says, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which actually means... New World Order.
Yeah, New World Order.
What, please tell us briefly, what is the New World Order all about? And what is this?
That's very true. This was put on the dollar bill in about 1933 by a guy called Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, who was like all these presidents. He was a front man for this hidden hand. Because how do you become president? You have to attract cuckoo land amounts of money. Who attracts that money? From the people that can afford that, the people that are going to front up for the cabal.
Yeah, but this is more like a Freemason
what it
symbol,
is,
isn't
because let me explain very simply how the world is actually controlled by the few. They've been around a long time, and they've created the secret society version of a transnational corporation. The headquarters is actually in Europe, in places like London and Rome and Paris. And if you look at a transnational corporation, say McDonald's, I was going to say take McDonald's, I wish someone would, but anyway, McDonald's, right? They have a headquarters somewhere in the world, America, and that dictates the global policy of McDonald's. In each country are the subsidiaries of the headquarters of McDonald's, carrying out that centrally dictated policy. So you go into a McDonald's in Moscow or Copenhagen or Australia, you're going into pretty much the same McDonald's. Now what these guys have done is set up something that is a secret society family, interconnected family version of that. In each country, you have a network of families and secret societies whose job is to carry out in that sphere of influence the centrally dictated agenda. And that is for the incessant centralization of power in all areas of our lives. Why? Because when there's a few, compared with the global population, we're talking a very few. The few want to control the many, they have to centralize decision-making. The more they centralize decision-making, the more power the few have over the many. Their nightmare is diversity of decision-making, because you can't control that centrally. And there's another equation that goes with this, which is the more you centralize power, the more power you have centrally to centralize even quicker. And that's why the speed of centralization has got faster and faster. I mean, it was some years ago now that this agenda was given a name, although people didn't realize they were giving it a name: globalization. What is globalization? It's the centralization of global power in all areas of our lives.
But we have democracy in all countries, in the Western world at least, eh?
Sorry, I came over all faint when you said that. This is one of the great myths, Lucas. The interuse of the words democracy and freedom. See, you know, it was very moving to see all those people on the in the square in Cairo. Not that it's changed anything up to this point, calling for freedom. Okay, that was great. But all that happened was one tyrant went, and the great structure through which the tyrant imposed his will, he's now running the country. Hey, we've moved on. And then you get the funny thing now, they've now arrested Mubarak, and the people questioning him for his behavior as president were the enforcers of his policy when he was president. I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you really? You don't have to. But what I saw was people demanding freedom as equating to democracy.
Rebellion, eh?
Democracy. But every now and again during the day, while the crowds were saying, I want freedom, we need freedom, in other words, democracy, lots of them were getting on their knees and facing Mecca. And are they talking about wanting freedom? Are you kidding? That's not... freedom is much greater than democracy.
But that's religion you're talking about now.
Well, yeah, but it's all interconnected. But democracy, what is that? Okay, let's take Obama as an example. But, you know, though he's an extreme example, it's the same in every country. It's happening in my country, Britain, now with this new government.
He's a Democrat, not a Republican.
It doesn't matter. This is how it works, and this is the same in every country. In America, you had Bush, who was a Republican, it says here, right? Quite demonstrably, even the mainstream media accepted this, bless them. Behind Bush was a group of people called the Democons. Sorry, the neocons, neoconservatives. And these were people like Richard Pearl and all those people that Paul Wolfowitz and a stream of other people that represented this organization called the Project for the New American Century, which in September 2000 produced a document demanding that America attack all the countries they've since attacked. But it said in this document that we're not going to get support for this to happen unless we have a major event like a new Pearl Harbor, right?
So you claim they are behind the government and their decisions?
Even the mainstream media accepted that in the end during the Bush administration. The neocons were running the show. Bush was just signing the papers when someone had helped him tie his shoelaces and told him how to use a pen. And then he gets replaced by this, Mr. Change, oh my God, I'm change and change and change. And never said what the change was, just change. Oh, yeah, change, I want change. Because they use change a lot, you know, because people basically don't like the status quo. So people come along and say, I'm going to change the status quo. Yeah, I want the status quo changing. I'll vote for you. So he comes in. Has any president in American history ever claimed to be more different than he claimed to be? And he comes in, not only is he not different, it's business as usual and then some. Because behind the Democrat president, running the Democratic Party, are a group of people, which I call the Democons. They're people like Zbigniew Brzezinski, mentioned him. There's people like George Soros, the billionaire financier, who has a network of trusts like the Open Society Institute and the International Crisis Group that specialize in triggering people's revolutions. They did it over Eastern Europe. They're doing it in North Africa now. And so the democons behind whoever is president at a Democratic period, and the neocons who are behind the president when it's in the Republican period, those two answer to the same force. Here, one step back. This is the hidden hand. So what it means is...
What's that force?
That force is this network of families and secret societies.
Is that what you call the New World Order?
No, it's what some people call it the Illuminati. The
Illuminati, yeah.
Let's use that, keep it simple. And therefore, whoever is president, Republican or Democrat, is being controlled by the same force. And that's why nothing changes. We had an election in which a guy called David Cameron came in to replace the Labour Party of Gordon Brown and previously Tony Blair, saying he was going to stop or roll back the surveillance state, he was going to do this, he's going to do that, he's going to do the other. He's done exactly the opposite. Now let's bring this back to democracy in general that affects every country.
So they work together, the British and the Americans, or... So what, I want to know, listen, who is working together? All 4 continents or just this?
Well, no, I've just explained this transnational corporation type structure where you've got the headquarters and then you've got the subsidiaries in each country. So all countries are dictated from the center. So,
and that includes China and Africa and the Arab world and Russia?
All of them. You've got to look at the pyramid structure. The pyramid structure, countries are pyramids, aren't they? They're the way they're structured in a hierarchy. You get to the top, right to the top of the pyramid, there is no difference. But you come back, you come down not far from the top of the pyramid, and they'll think there is a difference. This information about how it all works is fiercely what they call compartmentalized. So only people that need to know enough to make the contribution. That's as much as they are allowed to know, not beyond what they need to know. So it's fiercely compartmentalized. So, I mean, let's look at wars. I want to come back to this point about democracy though in a second. Let's look at wars. People declare wars, but they don't fight them. George Bush declared war on Afghanistan and Iraq, and yet he's never heard a gun fired in anger. If he'd have been in Iraq when the first bullet was fired, he'd have been under a bed in Houston with a pillow over his head when the second one went off. I mean, he never fought it. He just decided it was going to happen, or through him it was decided. Obama, yes, we must bomb Libya. He's not bombing Libya, is he? He's sitting in the White House having a cup of coffee.
So you mean the pyramid, it's only the eye, that the people inside the eye who knows everything and is involved with it, and then the people inside the rest of the pyramid who doesn't know?
Even at the level of an Obama or not Father Bush, he's much higher in the hierarchy, but Boy Bush and David Cameron, they only know a certain amount. They don't know the real big picture that's beyond that. It's all fiercely compartmentalized. But in terms of the democracy, let's just follow through this. You have an election campaign at which, take in America, same everywhere though, the same principle, at which you have apparently a choice. Do I vote for him or do I vote for him? Take the American thing. Do I vote for McCain last time or do I vote for Obama? Well, the hidden hand has made sure that an old man is put against a young, vibrant man, because that's going to give the young, vibrant man much, much better chance of getting in, because he's the one they really want, although McCain's a gopher for them as well. And
is that what he did with Sarah Palin?
Well, Sarah Palin was brought in, having had obviously one brain cell on active duty, to actually basically kill the campaign. I mean, you had Sarah Palin, who was talking about having foreign policy experience, because Alaska, you could see Russia from Alaska. I love it. And you had this old man, McCain, put against this vibrant kind of Obama. So, it's a fix. On that level alone, never mind all the other stuff. But, okay, McCain says, make me president, this is what I'll do. Same as the parties in Denmark. Make me president, prime minister, and this is what we'll do. Obama says, this is what I stand for. Change. Never said what. I'll bring change. Right? So then, as with Cameron in England, I'll roll back the surveillance state. There is no contract whatsoever with the people to make sure that you, who have got into power by saying this is what I will do, to actually do it. There is no contract whatsoever. So People vote for people because they say, well, I'd like that to happen, so I'll vote for him.
So what you're saying, that nothing matters?
It doesn't matter. They get into power, and then they do what they like. I mean, look at Obama. I mean, you couldn't be more unchanged than him. And he's an extreme example of it that goes on all over the world. There is no contract. So it's a con. What it is vote for me, so we give you the idea. You've got choice, and you're picking the government, okay? But your choice, what's your choice? Mask on the same face here, mask on the same face there. Which one do you want? And so they get in, and the agenda continues. And because from the moment you have cast your vote, for the next 4 or 5 years, you have no say whatsoever in what passes through Parliament as legislation and what the government introduces. And then they give you another farce of an election and another fake choice so that you'll vote again, and the same process happens for another 4 or 5 years. People who've understood this in America have a great saying. One great saying is, "Don't vote; it only encourages them." But the other one is that it doesn't matter who you vote for; the government still gets in. Yes, the hidden government still gets in. It's democracy is a farce.
So in reality, there is no conflict between America or the Arab world or Palestine. And
when you get onto not much below top level, you are meeting people who are genuinely in conflict.
In conflict.
Yeah, okay. That of course that does happen. I mean,
because it sounds extraordinary though for normal people to take all this in.
Well, one of the biggest challenges in getting this information across is what's happening in the world is such a chasm of a difference between what people are told by the movie through their lives, what is happening in the world, that people find it very difficult to make that jump. But because of world events and what's been unfolding since 2001, 2003, when weapons of mass destruction were not found in Iraq, when they already knew they weren't bloody there, unless they buried them at sea, Lucas, they might have done that, mightn't they? But anyway, they're starting to see it because of what's happening. And what we're seeing now in these people's revolutions, in apparent people's revolutions in the Middle East and North Africa, is a very significant pattern. The country they want next is demonized. The country that they don't want to get yet, because they have reasons for that, they are allowed, like in Bahrain, through the Saudi army and the United Arab Emirates troops and Bahraini authorities, to carry out the most grotesque atrocities upon Bahraini peaceful protesters, and not a word is said. Why isn't that all over the media? Instead, the focus is on Libya, because Libya is what they want next. And I'm not supporting.
Well, you say the media is controlled, so... Okay.
I have no support for Colonel Gaddafi. I don't want any kind of dictators in power. But they are not bombing Libya to protect civilians. They are bombing Libya because they want to take the country over. They want to get hold of the Libyan central bank, which operates outside of the global banking system, and they want the oil. And I said when they went in there, this no-fly zone, I said they will not stop. They say it's just a no-fly zone. You'll watch them up the ante more and more and more until he's gone. And now we've got troops on the ground training people.
But how on earth do you explain that one of the biggest concerns in the world right now, the financial crisis?
Well, how long have you got? Let's look at that. What is money? What is money? Anybody, any other guys, what's money? Where's it come from? Who creates it? Anybody know? Well, it's the government, isn't it? No. Money comes into circulation by private banks, ultimately controlled by the same cartel, issuing non-existent money called credit. So our very currency comes into existence at the start as a debt. When you go into a bank and you ask for, I don't know, 50,000 euros, what do? Where do they get it from? This is what they do. Because the same hidden hand has controlled governments that has controlled the banking system, laws have been introduced called fractional reserve lending that allow banks to lend at least 10 times, and it is at least 10 times what they have on deposit. So every time someone puts a euro in a bank, that bank can now lend 10 it doesn't have,
why is it happening
and
then?
Charge interest on it. Because it's a scam.
To do why? Why?
Well, okay.
Why?
Give me a list of things that you'd like to do with your life in an ideal blank sheet of paper way, and then start crossing off the ones you can't do because you don't have the money. Money is a massive suppressor of choice. It's a massive suppressor of human freedom. And what's happening now across Europe...
To take people's choice away, you mean?
Take
choices.
Not just take people's choice away, but to turn them into literal slaves. I mean...
This will happen in the Western world now?
Humanity's been slaves for thousands of years, mate. They just haven't bloody realised it. But I mean, look at what's happening now in America. You've got people who are living in... I've seen them. You're living in tent cities, corrugated iron bloody makeshift homes in the street and wasteland. Not people who don't want to work. People have been thrown out of their homes by banks owned by a handful of people, if we get to the top of the pyramid. And they've been thrown out of their homes by banks because they couldn't pay the mortgage. And they couldn't pay the mortgage because the greed, extraordinary levels of greed of the same banks that are throwing them out of their homes have crashed the global economic system. But not to affect the banks who are getting bigger and bigger bloody bonuses all the time. And of course, we then put our children and grandchildren up to their neck in debt for generations to bail out banks from the very crimes that they've committed. And not one single banker in America involved in this has actually been put in jail.
So it's not going to get better? Is that what you're saying? It's going to get worse?
Well, what they want to do, through problem reaction solution, is they want a world central bank that would dictate to all finance to every country. Again, the more you centralize power, the more the few dictate to more and more people. This is what the European Union is about. Mm-hmm. Fascist dictatorship, the European Union. But anyway, don't start me off about that. But the situation is, and this is why the world is constantly in chaos and upheaval, it's very, very difficult to change something that's working. And it's very, very difficult to change something which is operating in harmony. Mm-hmm. Because you come along and you say, I want to change it. And people go, what are you talking about? It's working. If it's not broke, don't mend it. Leave it. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep constantly making the status quo not work problem so you can get the reaction, do something that you can offer the solution. Okay. I've been saying ever since 2008, this is, and it's not, the crash we've seen is not the last one. They have a much bigger one in mind. And the idea is, stage one is to crash the economy, 2008. Stage two, quite coldly and calculatedly, was to get governments to spend or throw enormous amounts of borrowed money at the banks, therefore emptying their coffers and their ability to borrow anymore. And at that point, when governments can no longer respond, even in the ludicrous way that they did, then they come through and crash it again. And what do then? They're already doing it, Lucas. We need a new global financial structure and a world central bank. This professional manipulator, House of Rothschild frontman, George Soros, in America, actually had a conference at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire a few weeks ago, and came out and said we need a world central bank, something I'm predicting that they would come out with since this started. So once you understand how the game works, reading the world is so much easier.
Okay, this is a very interesting and important question, and I know a lot of people really want to know about this now.
Can't wait.
Yeah. You talk a lot about reptilian bloodlines.
Right.
Which makes you extremely controversial, connecting Jews, the global elite of the New World Order, and even the Queen of England and the royal family, to lizards, reptiles, and shapeshifters. I mean, the Queen of England, the nice lady waving with her handbag and smiling, and
less
come on.
Less emphasis on the nice, Lucas. Less emphasis on the nice. But I explain it at length in my books, and I explain it in my events at length. I don't run away from this at all. In fact, I run straight at it. What I'm presenting is such an incredibly different view of reality and the world than people get through the education system and all that stuff, that there is so much background to explain before the apparently ludicrous, and on the level that you just asked the question, people are, hey, he's mad. No, I do it. You see, I've got a simple philosophy. I want to know what's going on in the world. And I am going to communicate what I have concluded from research and evidence is going on in the world, and how people receive it is entirely up to them. That's none of my business, it's up to them. So I don't do it to be controversial. I don't do it for any other reason than 2 decades more of research in 55 countries have led me to very seriously to conclude that this is what's going on. To understand how this world is controlled, ultimately, we have to understand what reality is. I mean, we don't ask these questions, do we? We ask what time the game starts or when's the game show on, but we don't say, who are we? Where are we? What is this reality? How do we interact with it? What is it? Oh, well, it's solid. It's got to be solid. No, it's not solid. It's not solid. It can't be solid. How can something be solid if, as science tells us, it's made of atoms, and atoms have no solidity? This is one of the great kind of bewilderment areas of quantum physics. How can something be solid when what makes it up is not solid? Because there is no solidity. This is holographic. You know, you can buy...
This is holographic?
Yeah. You know,
so I'm not meeting you?
No, you're, what I'm looking at is a hologram.
Oh.
And you're looking at a hologram. It's just,
Really?
it's just a hologram. And you know the only place you exist in that form is I'm looking at you, in my head, in my decoding system. We live in. I'm going to go into this on Saturday in great length in the first 2.5 hours, because from that everything else becomes more understandable, like shape-shifting. But we live in effect in like a cosmic version of the internet. The wireless internet. Say this room where we're sitting has the wireless internet, okay? Where is it? Where is it? But I get a computer and I tune it into the wireless internet. Woo! Onto the screen comes a collective reality that is accessible by people anywhere in the world, apart from the, censored areas like China. But it's a collective reality. And I've just pulled it out of the unseen. And people say, I say to people, tell me about the internet. They say, well, yeah, well, it's graphics and websites and colors and text and pictures on the screen. Yes, it is. But that's the only place the internet exists in that form. Everywhere else, it's electrical circuits or, the wireless version of it. You say to people, tell me about television. They say, well, it's moving pictures on a screen. Well, yes, it is. But the only place that television is in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's either digital or in the analog, it's broadcast frequencies. And the television and the computer is decoding that information onto the screen. Well,
but we all say the same thing.
Yes. When you go onto the internet, if you go onto the same website, you see the same thing as someone going on that website anywhere in the world. Now, what the body is a holographic, what I call biological computer. For a biological computer, I mean, it's not like a desktop computer where it just responds to the way it's programmed data. It actually has the ability to assess information and make decisions on it. I mean, you're sitting there now, I'm sitting here now. What I'm saying is your immune system and my immune system are now working and making decisions. I mean, I'm not looking down at my left foot and saying, come on, I've got a problem over there, go and have a look at it. My immune system is constantly scanning, just like, Norton antivirus and all that stuff, scanning for challenges to the system. And what we're doing is we're taking vibrational information through the 5 senses. They turn it into electrical information, which is communicated to the brain, and the brain decodes that into digital and holographic information, which we perceive as the world outside of us, but it's actually inside of us. And this is why increasingly scientists are coming to my presentations, because it's when this is explained at length, in detail, it starts to break up the cul-de-sacs that science has hit, where our view of reality can't be true, because it can't explain this and it can't explain that. Well, where I'm coming from does explain it. So you've got points all over the brain which decode what we call sight, it decodes smell, it decodes all the senses. So when, for instance, you go to a hypnotist stage show, which I did many times when I was researching one book, and watched how a hypnotist can implant into the brain in effect, a version of reality. What he's actually doing is programming the computer to read reality in that way. I'll give you a simple example. I saw this person sitting on the stage in a hypnotist stage show, and she was eating a potato. But what she was tasting was an apple, because she had had that implanted into her. So when the electrical signal carrying the information of the potato hit the brain, it would normally decode the taste of the potato. And she'd be going, oh, God, it's horrible. But it didn't, because it had been implanted, programmed to read the taste of an apple. That's what she was tasting.
How can you program that?
Because the brain is a massively advanced computer system.
Well, what does that have to do with lizards and reptiles and bloodlines?
What it means is, when I take it further, is that reality is not solid. Therefore, for instance, shape-shifting is not the shifting, which goes back into the ancient world, all over the world. It's a common theme all the way through. That, it's not a solid body shifting to a solid body. The only place, it's an energetic shift, a vibrational shift, which the observer is the only place that, if you like, physical shift takes place, is in the observer. Because you've got, the base foundation of this whole reality, including the body, is a vibrational field. That's the information construct which is decoded through into this reality. So it's at this vibrational, non-physical level that there is a energetic shift, which is then played through, and the observer, the decoder, is decoding a human body, because he's decoding the human field, and then suddenly it's shifted and he's decoded a non-human body, because now he's decoding the non-human field, and then it will switch back again. To the observer, what they see in their decoded reality, this is something apparently moving from a solid shape to another different solid shape and back again. But it's not that. It's all in the decoding process.
Without changing appearance, you mean?
Well, the appearance, the decoded appearance changes because the energetic field that the observer is decoding changes. I mean, basically, let's put it in a simple way. If I'm watching channel 1, I'm decoding channel 1. If I flick the channel to channel 2, I'm suddenly seeing channel 2. I flick it back to channel 1, it's gone back to what I was seeing before. So it's gone from one form of image to another form of image and back again. But the only place that even that shape shift of switching channels has taken place in that form is on the decoded screen.
So how can that happen in a human being?
When I press the button and change channels, it's something within the television that changes. It tunes itself into another channel, and so what's on the screen changes. It's exactly the same when people see this shape-shifting. They're watching they're decoding one energy field. That energy field shifts energetically, not physically, and now suddenly it looks different, and then it goes back again. It's just like flicking channels in a way, much more sophisticated, of course. So that's the shape-shifting side of things. But of course, there's a lot more to know about that. But then again, let's ask another question. When we look around us and we're decoding a reality and therefore apparently experiencing it, are we seeing everything? Are we decoding everything there is to see in this reality, in the space that we're looking at? No, quite provably. The band of frequency that humans can decode, called visible light, is unbelievably tiny. According to mainstream science, and it will be more than this, of the mass matter that exists in this universe in various forms, seen and unseen, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can decode into what we call vision, sight, is a fraction of the 0.005%. As someone rightly said, when it comes to what humans are decoding within what there is to decode in the space we're occupying, humans are basically blind. See, if I had a radio here, or television, let's take a radio, and I tune it to radio 1, that's what I get, radio 1. So I'm on radio 1, and I move to radio 2. I'm now on radio 2. Radio 1 hasn't stopped broadcasting just because I'm not tuned to it. It's just that I'm tuned to another station now. So this body computer locks our perception in to a tiny band of frequencies, like a radio or television station. But in the same space that this one is occupying, there are endless other worlds operating on different frequency ranges that operate on the same frequency. And there are obviously, most of them are so far from this one in terms of frequency resonance that we have no perception of them. But some, as with interference on a radio station, if you're not quite on the dial, then you can hear another radio station. It's not sharp, but it can interfere. The frequency ranges, other worlds that are very close to this one that we're decoding, can interact with it and move into it and move out of it. And so when something moves into this frequency range from another one, suddenly it appears out of nowhere, because suddenly you weren't decoding it because it wasn't there, and now suddenly you are decoding it. And people say, honestly, mate, I saw this UFO and it just appeared out of nowhere. Or there was this entity at the bottom of my bed, it just came out of nowhere. And then they said that, and then it disappeared into nowhere. Well, we're going to look back, some people already do, are intelligent, and say, how could anyone believe that in this, even in the frequency band of the universe,
we're the only ones, huh?
that we are decoding, that we are the only ones that have developed. These reptilian entities, which are described all over the ancient world, in ancient texts and what have you. It's even in the Bible. I mean, why was it, do we really think that it was literally a snake that was involved in the Garden of Eden story, which is a symbolic story that can be found in other forms in other cultures all over the world? The Bible is just one of them. I mean, why is it that worship of the serpent or the reptile is the oldest known form of human worship? It goes back at least 70,000 years. That's mainstream anthropology and archaeology that's come up with that in Africa. And these reptilian entities were perceived as, quote, gods. And of course, there were American troops went into some areas of the world during the Second World War that had never seen an aeroplane, and they were perceived at first as gods. You can see how it came about. And these entities manipulate human society from just outside of human society most of the time. And they do it through a network of bloodlines that operate within visible light. These bloodlines are the ones we call the Illuminati bloodlines that control the banks, that control the transnational corporations, they control the political systems, etc., that own the media. I've been researching this now for the best part of, well, over 21 years, the reptilian thing for 15, 16, all over the world. And the common themes that people tell me of their experiences relate incredibly to the way that these gods, serpent gods, were described in the ancient world. Why was it that the Chinese emperors claimed the right to be emperor? Because of their connection to the serpent gods.
So we're talking about aliens, really? I mean, from outer space who came to Earth, and that's the bloodline, or is that?
Well, kind of. I don't like the word aliens. Aliens
extraterrestrial
appears to be, well, extraterrestrial. Yeah, anything not of the Earth is extraterrestrial. I prefer to call them, Lucas, interdimensionals. They move between frequencies. Right. You know, I've talked to former.
So they inhabited the Earth.
Well, I think they may have an expression within visible light, i.e. what we would call within our world, yes. But the real foundation, the point of control seems to be beyond this reality. And I've talked to former Satanists around the world who've taken part in these various grotesque rituals, which is about the manipulation of energy, basically, but other things too. And they've described to me how some of these rituals are actually designed to create energy doorways or gateways that allow these entities to move through into this reality. You know, from what they tell me, this classic satanic symbol of the inverted pentagram within the circle. Again, we see that at the decoded level, the holographic level, you're seeing a pentagram in a circle. If you take it back to its base form, it's an energetic field. And from what they tell me, and this, what they've described to me around the world, very, very consistent, is that actually what that does, especially when it's the center of a powerful kind of ritual these sick people do, it creates an energetic field that allows these entities to come into this reality. And the number of people around the world, and they're not just reptilian either, other very strange looking
it sounds a little bit like Star Trek. Beam me up.
Well, yeah, in a way. And, you know, a lot of Hollywood movies and television programs have told this story, basically, in apparently fictional ways. I mean, George Lucas, who produced the Star Wars, yeah. Well, he's a massive insider. I mean, he knows
massive insider of
insider of the Kabbalah. He knows the story, basically. And I would suggest that the symbolic story that he told in the Star Wars movies didn't happen in a galaxy far, far away, but much closer to home. And then you've got someone like Stanley Kubrick, who, the great filmmaker, he was an insider also.
Yeah, clearly.
And he tried in some of his films to expose it. And his last film was called Eyes Wide Shut, yes. Which of course had the famous ritual in the elite bloodline mansion. I didn't realize till about 2 months ago that he shot it in a Rothschild mansion, so that was real accurate. But anyway, what happened is that this is you know the mainstream really if you want to look for it. He produced this film and it was played to the executives and he was pacing up and down outside because he knew they wouldn't like it, and apparently they walked past him afterwards and didn't even acknowledge his existence, and later demanded he took 25 minutes out.
Really?
Yeah. And he refused, and he had a contract saying that his films couldn't be censored. Right? So,
but he died when he made the film.
It was his last film. He died, I think it was literally days later, of a heart attack. And when he died, they took 25 minutes out of it. No one's ever seen. And when you see the amount of that satanic type ritual that was shown in the film, what the heck was in the other 25 minutes? You know, these things, I know they're fantastic to people, and I know people would rather they weren't true. Do you know something? So do I. But they are, and it is what it is, and we need to face it. We need to understand, Lucas, that we have been living in a tiny, tiny bubble of perceived reality.
But then nothing makes sense.
Well, nothing.
What you're telling me is the truth.
Nothing makes sense. Put it this way, okay? You are looking from the top of a hill, and you're looking at a vast landscape, right? But you're looking at it through a telescope, right? Okay, tell me about that landscape. Tell me how it works. What connects to what? You can't, because you're seeing a tiny fraction of it. And what happens is when you open your mind, my goodness me, we need that so badly, and it is happening with more and more people. You literally are putting the telescope down, and you're seeing more and more of it and how it connects. And okay, now you're standing on the hill, and you're describing that infinite bloody landscape to someone standing next to you looking like that. They're saying, "You're bloody mad, I can't see it." This is the situation we're in.
But how could anybody believe this? How could you get people to believe this?
I don't want to get people to believe it. Why should I want to get people to believe anything? I'm putting out information that doesn't normally get out there. And how people receive it is entirely up to them. I am not trying to persuade anyone of anything. This world is drowning in people standing up, called politicians and scientists and academics and all the rest, telling people what they should believe, and if they don't believe it, they're wrong. We don't want any more of them.
But
so this is
have you ever felt
information.
afraid,
Make of it what for you leave.
Afraid of doing this?
No.
No fear?
No fear. None at all.
No?
Why?
And you never had any bad experiences about it?
Well, I mean, I'm being attempted to be undermined in various ways all the time, but I never know of any attempts on my life, and you know, I know. I mean, it sounds bizarre, and you get deeper into this, but this is a projection, right? Imagine this is a movie screen, and it's being projected from the back of the theatre. First of all, you're not going to change this here, are you? You're going to have to change the reel, but the foundation of everything, that this world is just a holographic version of.
So it's a matrix existence, huh?
It's a vibrational information field, right? Which is projected through into the holographic. You're going to change nothing in the holographic, because the holographic's like the movie screen. What are you going to do? Stand on the stage and shout abuse at the movie screen because you don't like the movie? It ain't going to change. It's a done deal. It's at the screen. This is where you have to change it. And if people are going to kill you, harm you, in the projected holographic level of this, they have to get in here, because they can't get in there, because it's just like on the screen. To get in here.
Next year, 2012, are we reaching another level of consciousness then?
Well, you know, I wrote a book, the first book I ever wrote, Lucas, after my experience of awakening, if you like, in 1990. And I called it The Truth Vibrations, because what I picked up at that time was that vibrational change was coming, and was going to wake people up, act like an alarm clock and wake people up. And it was also going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden. That this would transform human society. So you would think, given that I was writing about that 21 years ago, that I would say, yeah, see, look, Mayan calendar, 2012, I told you. But I'm not saying that. You know, I think 2012 is massively, massively overprayed. I think it's going to be exploited a great deal.
So it's a stunt?
Next year. No, I don't think it's a stunt so much as a massive misunderstanding and a lot of disinformation. And this vibrational change, which I was told about 21 years ago, is actually gathering. That's why I'm seeing all the time more and more people waking up, more and more people waking up all over the world. But it's not something where something's just going to change. I don't know what the date is now. They seem to have different dates, but one of them is December 12th, 2012. The world's not just going to change then. I mean, the greatest significance for me about 2012 is it's not 2011. But it's not 2013 either, or 2014. This is an ongoing thing. And it's a very exciting time, because we're seeing the control system seeking to impose more and more draconian controls on the people, the same time that more and more people are waking up and seeing it.
So it will happen gradually.
Yeah,
more,
I mean,
more
you know,
so.
I would say that
The awakening, as
before
you call it.
2020, we'll live in a different world, and we will have had some enormous challenges and some wonderful new understandings of self and the world by then.
You certainly have been challenging me and a lot of people, I think, and it's very mind-blowing and very fascinating and also very interesting.
It's been a pleasure, mate. And you know,
And,
it's just that to go into the deeper things, you need so much time.
And if you want to hear everything, you can go and see the lectures and the speeches that David is giving all over the world. And in 2 days, it's going to be in Copenhagen for around 8-9 hours.
That's right. With
And
16
books like this
1,300
one.
illustrations. It's not just
can-
me standing there talking.
It's like big books you've written here.
Yeah.
So it's like